President Thabo Mbeki is currently addressing business as he canvasses support for the ANC ahead of the elections. Let's listen in.
Inequality. We must urgently finalize our social compact to produce those results. It's a strange sentence in a local government manifesto. But the reason it's there is because we had to answer the question, having made all of these promises in these 18 pages, where are the resources going to come from? As you campaign, I'm sure all of us, as we know, as you campaign around the country, one of the things that the people in the local communities will raise is jobs. In truth, those jobs are not going to come from local economic initiatives. Therefore, the absolute imperative to focus on what is happening to our economy, because it is that economy which must produce these resources. Hence this commitment in the local government manifesto. Now, I'm quite sure that all of us here, particularly our business and professional people, will be very familiar with what has been happening over the last 15, 18 months with regard to the matter raised in that sentence. Because something very positive happened in our country in the aftermath of the emergence of this COVID-19 pandemic, which is that for the very, very first time, in my view, for the very, very first time since 1994, we had all of these social partners at home more or less saying the same thing about what needs to happen. The government, business, labor, civil society, community, constituency, all saying what the pandemic has said to all of us is that we need to join hands and work together to change the situation, to address the consequences of the pandemic, but also to say what is it even before the pandemic came, we were already in trouble. What is it that we need to do together in order to address, I'm saying not just the consequence of the pandemic, but to go beyond that? What are these problems of unemployment and poverty, inequality that we had failed to solve? It's time that we get together to do something about that. This was the very, very first time you had that being said in that way by everybody last year. And so you will recall that by September last year, the presidency, government, announced that an agreement had been reached at NEDLAC about a common approach to address these matters: unemployment, poverty, inequality. It was a common view and a common commitment by everybody. Let's join hands together and then do something together. And as a consequence of that, the following month, that was in September 2020, following month, October 2020, President Ramaphosa, you remember, convened the Joint Houses of Parliament, where he presented the South African Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, and said that it was an outcome of this consultation and discussion among the social partners at NEDLAC. A few months before that, which was in July 2010, one of the social partners, that is business, they had got together as part of that common commitment. Let's do something together to change these material conditions in our country. So they had got together, business, and produced their own plan, or rather what they called a strategy, an economic recovery strategy, which they published in July 2010. So they were first of the blocks, that social partner, business, July. Government followed in October. Now, part of the tragedy is that since then, the social partners have not kept that commitment to work together to produce a plan which will be implemented, which will take this country away from this terrible past, which is impacting today on millions of our people, the poverty, the unemployment, etc. There has been virtually no movement with regard to that. So you have an economic reconstruction and recovery plan presented to the country by the President of the Republic, which contains very, very important commitments about what needs to be done to produce this positive economic outcome that we're talking about. It's very good. About infrastructure, about industrialization, about localization, about role of women, role of youth, and all of that. I think none of the social partners would disagree with that vision. This is what we want to do in order to get South Africa to where we need it to be. That document says, if we do all of these things that are in this economic reconstruction and recovery plan over the next 10 years, that will result in the addition of, well, it will result in the totality of 3.6 new jobs over 10 years. 3.6 million new jobs. And says that would be a growth rate of 3% a year. Now, the truth of the matter is that that growth rate and that job creation, positive as both are, will not take us out of where we are today. We'll probably find at the end of that 10-year period that the numbers of unemployed have not decreased and may very well have increased. The program itself, the plan, recognizes that because, for instance, it cites what the National Development Plan said. That the National Development Plan said the economy must grow at a rate of 5.4%, not 3%. I think that's an acknowledgement that something more needs to be done. The business strategy was a 3-year plan, which will be followed later by other 3-year plans. But the first 3-year plan, they said would increase GDP by 1 trillion rand, create 1.5 million jobs, and increase tax revenues by 100 billion rand a year. And identified sectors of the economy where we had to focus. In truth, if you look at those figures, the figures produced by business about what is likely to happen if we implement their plan are better. The business figures are better. So, fortunately, as I was saying earlier, quite early on during 2020, all of the social partners said more or less the same thing about what needs to happen. And therefore, all of them insisted on the need to have a social compact. That we need a social compact to produce a common plan which should be binding on all of us. And that is why you then find in this local government manifesto of the ANC this sentence which I read to you, that we must urgently finalize a social compact between the social partners to achieve our country's fundamental social transformation, to reduce and eradicate the plague of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. That, in truth, is where the resources will come from. If this is done, what is said in this particular sentence, if it is done as it has to be done, then we will generate the resources that are needed in order to deal with these problems, which are very legitimately raised in the localities, in the local municipalities. Since I was reading about water, about roads, about and so on. So I'm saying, therefore, that the reason this manifesto contains that sentence is a commitment. It's a commitment by the ANC to say, at last we must move on this matter, which is going to require that all its social partners get together. They take all of the different plans that they've produced and put them together and say, what is it that we agree, which should be binding? One of the, I think, outstanding things that has happened as a result of this common approach is that you have business collectively saying, we propose this program, economic development and so on, covering all of these various sectors, and we commit as a private sector to invest 1 trillion rand in the South African economy for 3 years, over a period of 3 years. Comrade Provincial Chair, as is the very, very first time in all the years of our democracy that business has made a statement of that kind. To say we pledge to invest 1 trillion rand over 3 years. And they say in that program, the public sector, government, and so on.
All right, so let's leave former President Thabo Mbeki at this point. And some interesting points that he's making, that COVID-19 was the first time since 1994 that all groups actually were on the same page, from politics to civil society, labour, business, and really suggesting that that's the sort of unity we need to deal with crises such as the job crisis.
Yeah, and you know the government's always said this specific thing, that everybody needs to work together to try to deal with the jobs crisis in South Africa. The point he's making is that it happened during COVID, so it is actually possible. Whether or not we'll see that happen, though, post-COVID, when that eventually happens, Sally, is something that we'll have to see. We'll have more news in a moment. Stay with us.